The rental car fishtailed on black ice, and Hannah Grayson's heart lurched into her throat as the vehicle spun a full rotation before sliding to a stop mere inches from a snow-covered guardrail. She sat frozen, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles ached, watching fat snowflakes swirl in the beam of her headlights like a chaotic ballet. The mountain road ahead had disappeared beneath a white blanket that seemed to grow thicker with each passing second. Her phone buzzed with another weather alert, but she already knew she was in trouble. The blizzard that was supposed to arrive tomorrow evening had come early, and she was 40 minutes from the nearest town, climbing into the Cascade Mountains with no plan except to reach the cabin she had rented for a desperately needed week of solitude. Hannah took a shaky breath and eased her foot back onto the gas pedal. The wheels spun uselessly for a moment before catching, and the car crept forward at a glacial pace. She had left Seattle that morning with a duffel bag, her laptop, and every intention of spending the next 7 days alone with her thoughts, trying to figure out what came next after the gallery she had managed for 5 years closed its doors for good. At 26, she was starting over, and the weight of that reality pressed down on her shoulders like the snow accumulating on the roof of her car. The road curved sharply ahead, and through the swirling white, she spotted a warm glow. As she drew closer, squinting through the windshield, she made out the silhouette of a large cabin set back from the road. Smoke rose from its chimney, disappearing into the storm. Relief flooded through her. She could stop and ask for help, maybe get directions, or at least confirm she was still headed the right way. The rental property she had booked was supposed to be another 10 miles up the mountain, but visibility had dropped to almost nothing. Hannah pulled into the long driveway, her car struggling through the deepening snow. The cabin was beautiful even through the storm, all dark wood and large windows that glowed with golden light. Her wheels spun again as she tried to park near the front steps, and she realized with sinking certainty that she would not be driving anywhere else tonight. The snow was coming down so hard now that she could barely see the road she had just left. She grabbed her coat and pushed open the door, immediately gasping as wind-driven snow slapped her face. Head down, she fought her way up the steps and knocked hard on the heavy wooden door. Once, twice, 3 times. She was about to knock again when the door swung open, and she found herself staring at a broad chest covered in a dark wool sweater. "Please, I'm so sorry to bother you," she began, looking up, and the words died in her throat. The man standing in the doorway was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that fell slightly across his forehead and eyes so deep brown they were almost black. His jaw was strong and shadowed with stubble, and he was looking at her with an expression somewhere between concern and surprise. He was handsome in a way that made her forget for a moment that she was standing in a blizzard. "Come in," he said immediately, his voice low and commanding. He reached out and gently but firmly pulled her inside, closing the door against the howling wind. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine, Hannah shivered, snow sliding off her coat onto the hardwood floor. "I got caught in the storm. I have a cabin rented up the road, but I can't see anything and my car keeps sliding." "I thought maybe I could wait here for a bit, or you might know if there's anywhere closer. How far up?" he interrupted. The address said mile marker 47. His expression darkened. "That's 10 miles. You will not make it tonight. This storm is going to get worse before it gets better." He paused, seeming to consider something. "You will have to stay here." Hannah blinked. "I couldn't possibly impose like that. You will freeze to death in your car or drive off the side of the mountain," he said bluntly. "Those are your options if you leave. I am offering you a third." He extended his hand. "Nathan Xavier." She hesitated only a moment before shaking his hand, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. "Hannah Grayson, and thank you. Really. I promise I will get out of your way as soon as the storm passes." "It is supposed to last 3 days," Nathan said, turning and walking into the cabin. "Let me get your things from your car before it is completely buried." 3 days. Hannah followed him, dripping melted snow. The forecast said tomorrow night. The forecast was wrong. He pulled on a heavy jacket from a hook near the door. "Keys?" She fished them from her pocket and handed them over, watching as he disappeared back into the storm without another word. She stood in the entryway, taking in her surroundings. The cabin was stunning, with soaring ceilings supported by massive beams, a stone fireplace that dominated one wall, and furniture that managed to look both rustic and expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered what was probably a spectacular view in daylight, but now showed only darkness and swirling snow. Nathan returned minutes later covered in white, carrying her duffel bag and laptop case. He set them down and shrugged out of his jacket, shaking snow from his hair. "Your car is already buried past the wheel wells," he reported. "You made it just in time." Hannah wrapped her arms around herself, anxiety creeping in. 3 days trapped with a complete stranger. She studied him as he hung up his jacket. He moved with an easy confidence, economical and purposeful. There was something about him that suggested he was used to being in control. "I should call someone," she said, reaching for her phone. "Let people know where I am. You will not have service. The cell tower goes out in heavy storms." She checked her phone. No bars. What about a landline? No. Nathan walked to the kitchen area, which was open to the main living space. "I have a satellite phone for emergencies, but the storm is interfering with that as well. We are cut off until this passes." The reality of the situation settled over Hannah. She was snowed in, alone, with a man she did not know. Her practical side noted that if he had wanted to harm her, he could have easily done so already. Her instinctive side, the one she had learned to trust during years of navigating the sometimes predatory art world, told her that despite his brusque manner, Nathan Xavier did not feel dangerous. "Are you hungry?" he asked, pulling open the refrigerator. "Starving, actually." She had not eaten since a hurried breakfast that morning. "I can make pasta or steak. I have both." "Whatever is easiest. I don't want you to go to any trouble." He glanced at her over his shoulder, and for the first time something that might have been amusement flickered in his dark eyes. "You are already here. The trouble is done." Hannah found herself smiling despite her nerves. "Pasta sounds great." She watched as he moved around the kitchen, pulling out ingredients with practiced efficiency. He filled a pot with water, set it on the stove, and began chopping vegetables with quick, confident strokes. There was something hypnotic about watching him work. "You cook often?" she asked, perching on one of the bar stools at the kitchen island. "When I am here, yes. It is one of the few things I find genuinely relaxing. And when you are not here, I do not relax." He said it flatly, without humor or self-deprecation, just a statement of fact. "That sounds exhausting." "It is." He tossed the vegetables into a pan where olive oil was already heating. The sizzle and aroma filled the warm space. "What do you do, Hannah Grayson?" "I managed an art gallery, past tense. It closed 2 weeks ago." The words still hurt to say out loud. "Did you find the work fulfilling?" She considered the question. "I loved discovering new artists, seeing their work connect with people who appreciated it. I loved creating spaces where beauty and meaning intersected. But the business side, the politics, the wealthy collectors who saw art as investment portfolios rather than expressions of human experience." She trailed off, realizing she was oversharing with a stranger. "Sorry, I'm sure you don't want to hear my career crisis," I asked. Nathan added pasta to the now boiling water. So you came up here to figure out what comes next. Something like that. I needed to get away from the city, from well-meaning friends asking what my plan is. I don't have a plan. I have questions and no answers. Sometimes questions are more valuable than answers. She studied his profile as he stirred the pasta. That sounds like something a fortune cookie would say. This time she was certain she saw him almost smile. I have been told I sound like a fortune cookie on occasion. By who? People who work for me. Hannah filed that away, people plural working for him, so he owned a business of some kind. She watched as he drained the pasta, tossed it with the sautéed vegetables, and added what looked like homemade sauce from a container in the fridge. He plated 2 servings and slid one across the island to her, along with a fork and napkin. "This looks amazing," she said, and meant it. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The pasta was delicious, the vegetables perfectly cooked, the sauce rich and complex. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Inside, the fire crackled and the kitchen glowed with warm light. It felt surreal, this unexpected sanctuary. "What brought you up here?" Hannah asked, "if you don't mind me asking." "The same thing as you, quiet, distance from the rest of the world. Do you come here often, when I can, which is not as often as I would like?" He paused, seeming to debate whether to say more. "I bought this property 5 years ago. I had plans to spend time here, disconnect, remember what it felt like to be human rather than a machine that solves problems and makes decisions. But life has a way of consuming every available moment. What kind of work do you do?" "I run a company." Hannah waited, but he did not elaborate. She took another bite of pasta, deciding not to push. If he wanted to share more, he would. After dinner, Nathan showed her to the guest room upstairs. It was spacious and beautifully appointed, with a comfortable-looking bed covered in soft quilts and its own bathroom. "There are extra towels in the cabinet," he said, standing in the doorway. "And if you need anything, my room is down the hall, last door on the right." "Thank you, Nathan. Really. You probably saved my life tonight." He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his dark eyes. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we can assess the situation and figure out how long you will be my unexpected house guest." After he left, closing the door quietly behind him, Hannah unpacked her duffel and changed into pajamas. She could hear the storm raging outside, the wind sounding like a living thing trying to tear the cabin apart. But inside, she felt safe. She climbed into bed and pulled the quilts up to her chin, thinking about the man down the hall. Nathan Xavier was an enigma, gruff and solitary but not unkind. She found herself curious about him, about the life he had built, and the reasons he had retreated to this mountain cabin. She fell asleep to the sound of the storm and woke in the middle of the night to silence. Disoriented, she sat up, looking around the unfamiliar room. Moonlight streamed through the window, and when she crossed to look out, she gasped. The storm had passed, at least temporarily, and the world outside was transformed. Snow covered everything in pristine white, mounding on tree branches and transforming the landscape into something from a fairy tale. The sky was clear, stars brilliant and infinite above the mountains. She heard a sound downstairs, and after a moment of hesitation, pulled on her robe and ventured out of the room. The cabin was dark except for the dying embers in the fireplace. Nathan sat in an armchair facing the windows, silhouetted against the moonlit snow. He had a glass of something in his hand and was staring out at the night. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly, not wanting to startle him. He did not turn. "Sleep and I have an uneasy relationship." Hannah crossed to the windows, standing a few feet from his chair. "It's beautiful out there." "Yes." "Is the storm over?" "Just the eye. It will start again soon, worse than before." She hugged herself against the chill. The fire had burned too low to provide much warmth. As if reading her mind, Nathan stood and moved to the fireplace, adding logs and stoking the flames until they caught and blazed. The light danced across his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the intensity of his gaze as he worked. "You want a drink?" he asked, gesturing to the glass he had left on the side table. "What are you having?" "Scotch, but I have wine if you prefer." "Scotch sounds good." He poured her 2 fingers in a crystal glass and handed it to her. Their fingers brushed, and she felt a spark of something that had nothing to do with static electricity. His eyes met hers for a moment, and she wondered if he had felt it too. They settled into the chairs facing the windows, sipping their drinks and watching the night. The silence between them felt easy now, comfortable in a way that surprised Hannah. She barely knew this man, and yet sitting here with him in the quiet darkness felt natural. "Can I ask you something?" she ventured. "You can ask, I may not answer." "Fair enough. Why do you really come up here?" "You said to remember what it felt like to be human, but that sounds like something deeper than just needing a vacation." Nathan was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then, softly, he said, "I built something. A business. It started as an idea, something I was passionate about, something that mattered. Over the years, it grew beyond anything I imagined. And somewhere in that growth, I lost track of why I started in the first place. The company became about profit margins and market share and shareholder value. I became someone who made decisions that affected thousands of people, and I forgot to ask whether those decisions aligned with the person I wanted to be." He took a drink. "Coming here reminds me. At least it is supposed to. But usually I bring work with me and the cycle continues." Hannah absorbed this, hearing the pain beneath his words. "What kind of company?" "Manufacturing. We make components for renewable energy systems. Solar panels, wind turbine parts, battery storage systems." "That sounds like important work. Work that matters." "It is. But when you are buried in quarterly reports and acquisition strategies and personnel issues, it is easy to forget that. It becomes numbers and projections rather than something that might actually help the world. So why not step back? Find someone else to run it while you focus on the parts you care about. Because I do not trust anyone else to maintain the integrity of what I built. I have seen too many good companies lose their way when the founders step aside." He looked at her. "You understand this, I think. You said you loved discovering artists and creating meaningful spaces, but the business side corrupted that. How do you separate the meaning from the machinery required to sustain it?" "I don't know," Hannah admitted. "That's why I'm here, trying to figure it out. Tell me about the gallery. What made you fall in love with art?" She settled deeper into her chair, cradling the scotch. "When I was 16, my high school took us to the Seattle Art Museum. I was standing in front of this painting, a landscape by a local artist I had never heard of. It was just trees and water and light, nothing spectacular. But something about the way the artist had captured that particular moment, the way the light fell through the leaves, the stillness of the water, it made me feel something I couldn't name. Like recognition, but of something I had never experienced. Does that make sense?" "Yes." "After that, I was hooked. I studied art history in college, worked at galleries throughout school, learned the business side. I thought if I could help create spaces where other people had those moments of recognition, of connection with something beyond their everyday experience, then I would be doing something worthwhile. And sometimes it worked. But more often, I was dealing with artists whose egos exceeded their talent, or collectors who bought art because their decorator told them it matched their sofa." She laughed without humor. "I became cynical. I forgot what drew me to it in the first place. So we are both searching for the same thing. The path back to meaning. Hannah met his eyes. I guess we are. Outside, as Nathan had predicted, the wind began to pick up again. Snow started falling, tentative at first, then harder. The brief window of calm closed, and they were once again cut off from the world. They talked through the night as the storm raged, speaking with the strange intimacy of people who believed they would never see each other again once this ended. Nathan told her about growing up in Montana, the son of a mechanic who taught him to work with his hands and solve problems through persistence. She told him about her childhood in Portland, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs and still found time to take her to museums and galleries on free admission days. When dawn broke, gray and muted through the heavy snow, they were still sitting by the windows. Hannah felt tired but energized, the way she always did after a night of genuine connection with another person. She had not realized how isolated she had become in the months leading up to the gallery's closure, how much she had needed this. I should let you get some rest, Nathan said, standing and stretching. His sweater rode up slightly, revealing a strip of toned stomach, and Hannah looked away quickly. You too, you need to sleep. I will try. But his tone suggested he was humoring her. Hannah returned to her room and slept until early afternoon, waking to the smell of coffee and something baking. She showered, dressed, and headed downstairs to find Nathan in the kitchen, pulling a tray of muffins from the oven. I didn't know you baked too, she said, pouring herself coffee from the French press on the counter. I am full of surprises. He set the tray on the counter to cool. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months. Must be the mountain air, or the scotch, she laughed. Or the scotch. They spent the day in easy domesticity. The storm continued without pause, dumping snow until the drifts reached halfway up the first-floor windows. Nathan showed Hannah his collection of books, an eclectic mix of philosophy, history, and fiction that lined an entire wall of the main room. They read in comfortable silence, occasionally sharing passages that struck them as particularly good or profound. Hannah learned that Nathan had strong opinions about Hemingway, overrated, preferred Steinbeck, tragically underread, and had a weakness for mystery novels, guilty pleasure. She shared her love of Willa Cather, her complicated relationship with the modernists, and her secret addiction to romance novels, not so guilty pleasure. Romance novels, Nathan raised an eyebrow, don't judge. They're about hope and connection, and the belief that people can find each other despite all odds. What's wrong with that? Nothing. I am just surprised. Because they're not literary enough. Because you seem too pragmatic to believe in that kind of story. Hannah bristled slightly. I'm pragmatic about business and money and all the ways the world tries to grind you down. That doesn't mean I can't believe in love. Something shifted in his expression. I suppose not. That evening, Nathan taught her to play chess. Hannah had never learned, and she was terrible at it, but she enjoyed watching him explain the strategy. The way his face became animated when he talked about controlling the center of the board and thinking 3 moves ahead. You are overthinking it, he said after she had spent 5 minutes staring at the board. You just told me to think ahead. Think ahead, but also trust your instincts. My instincts are telling me I'm going to lose. Probably. But you will learn more from losing than winning. She made her move, a reckless gambit with her knight. Nathan studied the board, then looked at her with something like respect. That was either brilliant or suicidal. Let's find out. 4 moves later, he had checkmated her, but she had managed to take 2 of his major pieces in the process. Not bad for a first game, he said. Liar. I was terrible. You were inexperienced. That's different. You have good instincts. You just need to learn when to trust them and when to think strategically. Is that how you approach business? It is how I approach everything. They played 2 more games, and Hannah lost both but did progressively better. She was intensely aware of Nathan across the small table, the way his hands moved the pieces with precision, the furrow of concentration between his brows, the rare flash of approval when she made a good move. On the third day, the storm finally began to ease. The snow fell more gently, the wind died down, and the oppressive gray of the sky lightened to pearl. Nathan went outside to assess the situation and returned an hour later covered in snow. "The road is impassable," he reported. "Several trees down between here and the main highway. But I have a snowmobile. Once the storm stops completely, I can get you to town." Hannah felt an unexpected pang at the thought of leaving. These 3 days in the cabin with Nathan had been strange and unexpected and oddly perfect. She had not thought about her failed career or uncertain future. She had simply been present, engaged in conversation and connection with someone who understood her in ways she had not anticipated. "When do you think the road will be clear?" she asked. 2 days, maybe 3. "The county is good about plowing, but with this much snow and trees down, it will take time." So they had more time. Hannah was surprised by how much that pleased her. That night, Nathan made steaks with roasted vegetables, and they opened a bottle of red wine he had been saving. The conversation flowed easily now, no longer tentative or polite. They debated politics and philosophy, shared stories from their pasts, laughed over embarrassing moments and bad decisions. "I can't believe you tried to fix your own roof," Hannah said, giggling into her wine. "I am capable of fixing a roof, except you fell through it." "I did not fall through, I made a strategic hole that you then had to pay someone else to repair." Minor details. But he was smiling, a real smile that transformed his face from handsome to devastating. Hannah felt her heart stutter. Over the past 3 days, she had come to appreciate Nathan's intelligence, his dry humor, his surprising kindness. But this smile, unguarded and genuine, made her see him differently, made her aware of the attraction she had been carefully not acknowledging. The wine made her bold. "Can I ask you something personal? You have been asking me personal things for 3 days. More personal, is there someone back in your regular life? A girlfriend or wife or something?" Nathan's smile faded, but not in a way that suggested she had overstepped. "No. There was someone, a few years ago. It didn't work. She wanted more than I could give, and I wanted more than she could understand. Since then, there have been dates that went nowhere and connections that fizzled before they started. My life doesn't leave much room for relationships." "That sounds lonely." "It is." He refilled their wine glasses. "What about you?" "Similar story, different details. There was a guy at the gallery, another manager. We dated for a year. It was comfortable and easy and completely wrong. We wanted different things. He wanted to get married and buy a house in the suburbs and have kids right away. I wanted to travel and take risks and figure out who I was before committing to who we would be together. So we ended it." "Do you regret it?" "Not for a second. Comfortable and easy isn't enough." "What is enough?" Hannah considered the question, swirling the wine in her glass. "Partnership. Someone who challenges me and respects me and sees me clearly, flaws and all, and still chooses me. Someone I can talk to at 3 in the morning and trust with my fears and dreams. Someone who makes me want to be braver and better." She looked up, meeting Nathan's eyes. "Someone who feels like coming home." The air between them seemed to thicken. Nathan held her gaze, and Hannah saw something kindle in his dark eyes, something that made her breath catch. "That is a tall order," he said quietly. "I'd rather be alone than settle for less." "So would I." They sat in charged silence, the fire crackling, the wind a distant whisper outside. Hannah knew she should look away, diffuse the tension, make a joke or change the subject, but she could not. She was caught, pinned by the intensity of Nathan's stare and her own growing awareness that something significant was happening between them. Nathan stood abruptly. "I should check the generator before we lose power." He left before she could respond, and Hannah sat alone with her racing heart and half-empty wine glass, wondering what the hell she was doing. This was temporary. In a few days, Nathan would drive her to town or the road would be cleared, and they would return to their separate lives. She would probably never see him again. Getting attached, letting herself feel anything beyond friendly gratitude, was foolish, but her heart, it seemed, had not received that memo. She cleaned up the kitchen and was heading upstairs when Nathan returned from checking the generator. They met in the dim hallway, and he caught her arm gently. "Hannah." She turned, and he was so close she could feel the cold radiating from his clothes, smell the winter night on his skin. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I should have mentioned when you first arrived." Her stomach dropped. Here it was, the revelation that would shatter this fragile bubble they had built. He was married after all, or engaged, or in witness protection. "Or I am not just a guy who runs a business," Nathan said. "I founded Xavier Renewable Solutions. We are one of the largest manufacturers of green energy components in North America. The company is worth billions. I am worth billions. I should have told you sooner, but I liked that you did not know. I like being just Nathan, not Nathan Xavier the billionaire or the CEO or the person everyone wants something from." Hannah stared at him, processing this information. Xavier Renewable Solutions. She had heard of it, of course. Everyone who paid attention to the green energy movement had heard of it. And Nathan Xavier, the reclusive founder who had revolutionized solar panel efficiency and made wind energy economically viable in regions previously dependent on coal. "You're that Nathan Xavier," she said slowly. "Yes. And you were worried I would treat you differently if I knew. Everyone does." Hannah thought about the past 3 days, the conversations they had shared, the easy connection she had felt. "You're still the same person who makes terrible jokes about fortune cookies and falls through roofs and plays chess with someone who doesn't know a bishop from a knight." Something in his expression eased. "I am." "Then why does it matter what's in your bank account?" "Because money changes things. It changes how people see me, what they want from me. It makes everything transactional." "I don't want your money, Nathan." "I know. That is why I am telling you, because you deserve to know who I am completely before this goes any further." Before what goes any further, he stepped closer and her back pressed against the wall. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "This," he said. "Whatever this is between us. Nathan, tell me you don't feel it. Tell me these past 3 days have been just two strangers passing time, and I will step back. I will take you to town as soon as the road's clear, and we will part ways. And this will be a story we tell about the time we got snowed in during a blizzard." Hannah's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I can't tell you that." "Then tell me what you do feel." She took a shaky breath. "Terrified, excited, like I'm standing at the edge of something I don't understand but don't want to walk away from." Nathan leaned in, his forehead touching hers. "I feel the same. This is crazy. We barely know each other. I know you prefer Cather to Hemingway. I know you scrunch your nose when you are thinking hard. I know you take your coffee black and hate mornings and laugh at your own jokes. I know you have a streak of recklessness you hide under pragmatism. I know you believe in love even though life has given you reasons not to. I know when you talk about art, your whole face lights up. I know you are brave and kind and brilliant." His hand slid to the back of her neck. "What else do I need to know? If you snore. What you're like when you're angry, how you handle stress, whether you squeeze the toothpaste from the middle or the end. All the boring, daily things that make or break real relationships." I don't snore. I get quiet when I am angry. I handle stress poorly, which is why I work too much. And I squeeze from the end because I am not a barbarian." His lips quirked. "But you make a good point, which is why I am not asking you to make any decisions tonight. I am just asking permission to kiss you." Hannah knew she should say no. She should maintain boundaries, protect her heart, be sensible. But sensible had never gotten her anywhere worth going. "Yes," she whispered. Nathan kissed her softly at first, a question and an answer. Hannah melted into him, her hands finding his shoulders, then his neck, threading into his hair. He deepened the kiss, and she felt heat flood through her, desire and connection and something deeper she was afraid to name. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers again. "I have not felt this way in a very long time," he said quietly. "Maybe never, me neither. I don't want you to leave when the road's clear. I don't want to leave either, but we have to be realistic. You have a life and a company to run. I have to figure out what comes next for me. We can't just stay in this cabin forever." "Why not?" She laughed, thinking he was joking, but his expression was serious. "Because that's not how the world works, Nathan. The world works however we decide it works." He took her hand. "Stay, not forever, not in this cabin, but stay in my life. Come back to Seattle with me. Move into my house while you figure out your next step. Let's see where this goes without the pressure of a deadline." "That's insane. I can't just move in with you." "Why not?" "Because we just met. Because I don't want to be dependent on you or your money. Because what if it doesn't work out?" "What if it does?" Hannah wanted to say yes. Every cell in her body was screaming yes. But the practical part of her brain, the part that had protected her from bad decisions and heartbreak, urged caution. "Let me think about it," she said. "This is all happening so fast." Nathan nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Of course. Take all the time you need." He kissed her forehead and retreated to his room, leaving Hannah standing in the hallway, her lips still tingling, her mind racing. She did not sleep that night. Instead, she sat by the window in her room, watching the snow fall gently in the moonlight, thinking about Nathan's offer. It was reckless and romantic, and everything her practical self said she should refuse. But it was also possibly the best thing that had ever happened to her. By morning she had made her decision. She found Nathan in the kitchen making coffee. He looked tired, as though he had not slept either. "I want to say yes," she told him, "but I have conditions." He turned, hope flickering across his face. "I am listening. I pay rent. Market rate wherever I am staying. I don't care if you think it's unnecessary. I need to contribute or I will feel like I'm taking advantage of you." "Agreed. I'm going to look for work. I don't know what yet, but I'm not going to just sit around. I need purpose." "I would never expect otherwise. And we take this slowly. No pressure, no expectations. We date like normal people. Dinner, movies, whatever. We get to know each other outside of this bubble. I can do that. And if it doesn't work out, we part as friends. No drama, no ugliness." Nathan crossed to her, taking both her hands in his. "If it doesn't work out, I will be devastated, but yes, we will part as friends." Hannah smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Okay then. I guess I'm coming to Seattle." He kissed her, and it felt like a beginning. The roads were finally cleared 4 days later. Nathan loaded Hannah's bag onto his snowmobile, and they made the journey to town, where his car was waiting in a private garage. The drive back to Seattle took most of the day, the mountain roads still treacherous in places. Hannah watched the landscape change as they descended, the snow giving way to rain, the mountains flattening into foothills, then the sprawl of the city rising to meet them. She felt nervous and excited, wondering what she had gotten herself into. Nathan's house was in a quiet neighborhood overlooking Elliott Bay. a modern masterpiece of glass and steel that somehow managed to feel warm and inviting. He gave her a tour, showing her the guest suite that would be hers, complete with a sitting area and private balcony. "This is bigger than my entire apartment was," Hannah said, taking it all in. "Make it your own. Move furniture, hang art, whatever you need to feel comfortable." Over the following weeks, they settled into a rhythm. Nathan went to his office during the day while Hannah explored the city, reacquainted herself with Seattle's art scene, and started networking. She set up meetings with gallery owners she had met over the years, sent out resumes, and began to form the outline of what she wanted to do next. Evenings, she and Nathan cooked together, talked about their days, and slowly learned each other. She discovered that he was meticulous about his workspace but messy everywhere else, that he loved jazz music and was terrible at dancing, that he had a weakness for bad action movies and could quote entire scenes from films she had never heard of, that he was generous to a fault, constantly looking for ways to help people without drawing attention to himself. He learned that she was fiercely independent but secretly loved being taken care of, that she had a temper but never stayed angry long, that she cried at commercials and laughed at her own jokes and sang off-key in the shower, that she was more vulnerable than she let on and braver than she believed. They went on dates, dinner at tiny restaurants Nathan loved, a jazz club where they sat close and he held her hand, a weekend trip to Portland to meet her mother, who took one look at Nathan and pulled Hannah aside to whisper, "Don't screw this up." They also had their first fight, 2 months in. Hannah had been offered a position as assistant curator at a prestigious gallery, a job she wanted badly. But the salary was less than she had hoped, and she was considering declining when Nathan suggested he could talk to the owner, maybe influence the offer. "Absolutely not," Hannah said firmly. "I am just trying to help. By leveraging your money and influence to get me something I haven't earned." "How would I ever know if I got the job because of my qualifications, or because Nathan Xavier made a phone call? Does it matter? You would have the job you want. It matters to me. I need to know I can succeed on my own merits, not because I'm sleeping with a billionaire." Nathan's face went cold. "Is that what you think this is? Me buying you? No, but that's what everyone else will think." They had stared at each other, both hurt and angry, and then Nathan had walked out. Hannah had sat alone in the big house, wondering if she had just ruined the best thing in her life. He came back an hour later with Thai food from her favorite place and an apology. "You are right," he said. "I overstepped. I am so used to solving problems with resources that I forgot what you need from me is not money or influence. It is support and belief in your ability to create your own success." Hannah had cried then, not from sadness but relief. "I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have implied that you were trying to buy me. I know you're just trying to help. How do I help without making it worse? Just be here. Believe in me. Celebrate with me when things go right and hold me when they don't. I can do that." They had eaten Thai food on the couch and talked through their fears and expectations, and when they finally went to bed that night, their connection felt stronger for having survived conflict. Hannah took the curator job, even with the lower salary. It was challenging and fulfilling, and she threw herself into it with enthusiasm. She organized exhibitions that pushed boundaries, spotlighted emerging artists who needed platforms, and slowly began to rebuild her sense of purpose. 6 months after the blizzard, Hannah moved her belongings from storage into Nathan's house. It was not explicitly discussed, it just happened naturally. Her clothes drifted from the guest suite to his closet. Her books mingled with his on the shelves. Her art started appearing on the walls. One day, she realized she had been referring to it as home instead of Nathan's house. and the thought made her smile. They fell into the comfortable patterns of couples who were building something real. Lazy Sunday mornings in bed. Grocery shopping together, arguing playfully over whether they needed more eggs. Dinner parties with friends where Hannah delighted in making Nathan laugh in front of people who had only ever seen his serious side. His colleagues and business associates were fascinated by her, this woman who treated Nathan Xavier like a regular person, and clearly had no interest in his money. Hannah found it amusing and sometimes exhausting the way people watched them, looking for cracks or signs that she was a gold digger or he was slumming. But she also saw how Nathan came alive around her. He laughed more, relaxed more, made time for things that were not work. He started painting, something he had not done since college, setting up a studio in one of the spare rooms. Hannah would come home to find him covered in paint, absorbed in creating something just for the joy of it. "You are good at this," she said one evening, studying a canvas he had been working on. "I am mediocre at best. You are better than mediocre. You have an eye for color and composition. The curator speaks. The curator knows what she is talking about." She wrapped her arms around him from behind. "You should show these." "Absolutely not." "Why not? Art doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful." "Because then it becomes about Nathan Xavier, the billionaire who paints, not about the work itself." She understood. It was the same reason he loved the cabin, the same reason he had not told her who he was at first. He wanted spaces where he could just be Nathan, not the sum of his accomplishments and net worth. One evening, nearly a year after the storm, Nathan came home with an unusual request. "I want you to come to a gala with me next month." Hannah looked up from the exhibition catalog she was reviewing. "You hate galas." "I do, but this one is for the Seattle Art Museum and I thought you might enjoy it. Is this a ploy to make me your arm candy at a boring event?" "Yes." "Will it work?" she laughed. "Probably. Let me check my calendar." The night of the gala, Hannah wore a deep emerald dress that made her eyes bright and her skin glow. Nathan wore a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, and when he saw her, his expression made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. "You are stunning," he said, kissing her carefully so as not to smudge her lipstick. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The gala was at the museum, rooms full of art and wealthy patrons sipping champagne and discussing six-figure acquisitions. Hannah felt at home in this world but also distant from it. She no longer cared about impressing collectors or schmoozing with donors. She cared about the art, about the artists who created it, about making sure their work found audiences who would appreciate it. She was studying a particularly striking abstract piece when a woman approached her. "Hannah Grayson, isn't it? I heard you were working at the Morrison Gallery." Hannah turned to find Victoria Chen, a prominent collector she had known in her previous life. "Hi, Victoria. Yes, I am the assistant curator there. I loved the emerging artist showcase you organized last month. Very fresh, very bold. Thank you. We have some exciting things planned for the fall as well. I am sure you do, and I see you are here with Nathan Xavier." Victoria's expression was carefully neutral, but Hannah caught the subtext. "How did you two meet?" "We got snowed in together during a blizzard." Hannah said it lightly, as if it were a funny story rather than the night that changed her life. "How romantic. Though I am sure it doesn't hurt that he is one of the wealthiest men in the state." There it was. The implication that Hannah was with Nathan for his money. She had been expecting it all evening. "Actually, I didn't know who he was when we met. He was just a guy with a cabin and terrible chess skills." She smiled sweetly. "Though his money does come in handy when we need to order takeout." Victoria laughed, uncertain whether Hannah was joking. Before she could respond, Nathan appeared at Hannah's side, his hand warm on her lower back. "Victoria," he said smoothly, "have you seen the new installation in the contemporary wing?" "Not yet." "You should. It is remarkable." He gently steered Hannah away, leaving Victoria behind. "You didn't have to rescue me," Hannah murmured. "I know. But I wanted to. Victoria is exhausting." They wandered through the museum, and Hannah found herself relaxing, enjoying the art and Nathan's company. He had opinions about the pieces, some of which she agreed with, and some of which made her laugh at how wrong he was. "That piece does not evoke despair," she insisted, gesturing at a colorful textile installation. "It evokes joy and resilience. It evokes chaos, joyful chaos. There is no such thing. Our relationship is joyful chaos." Nathan considered this. Fair point. They ended up on a balcony overlooking the city, lights twinkling in the darkness. Nathan pulled her close and she rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said quietly. "I know these events are not your favorite anymore. They are fine when I am with you. Hannah." He turned her to face him, his expression serious. "This past year has been the best of my life. You have made me remember who I wanted to be, not just who I have become. You have made me laugh and challenged me and shown me what a real partnership looks like." Her heart started to race. She knew what was coming, felt it in the air between them. Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a ring, a simple but stunning diamond set in platinum. "I know we said we would take this slowly," he continued, "but I don't want slow anymore. I want forever. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to support your dreams and share mine with you. I want to have ridiculous arguments about art and cook together and travel the world and maybe someday have a family. I want everything, Hannah. With you." He dropped to one knee, and Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "Will you marry me?" She could not speak around the emotion clogging her throat, so she just nodded, laughing and crying at the same time. Nathan stood and slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the cabin where they had met. The storm had been rough, but this time they had planned for it, ensuring their closest friends and family could make it up the mountain safely. Hannah wore a simple white dress that made her feel like herself, and Nathan wore a suit but no tie, because ties were for people who did not get married in mountain cabins. Hannah's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Nathan's father, the mechanic from Montana who still could not quite believe what his son had accomplished, stood tall and proud. Their friends from Seattle mingled with family, and everyone agreed they had never seen two people more perfectly matched. The vows they wrote themselves were simple and true. Nathan promised to support Hannah's independence even when he wanted to solve her problems. Hannah promised to let Nathan help even when her pride told her she should do everything alone. They promised to laugh together, to be honest, to choose each other every single day. After the ceremony, as snow fell softly outside and a fire crackled in the stone fireplace, they danced to jazz music in the cabin where their story had begun. "I never thought I would be that person who believed in fate," Hannah said, her head on Nathan's chest. "What changed your mind? You, us, the storm that brought me here." She looked up at him. "What are the odds that I would get caught in that blizzard, that I would happen to pull into your driveway, that we would connect the way we did? Astronomical." "Exactly. So either it was incredible luck or something more. Does it matter which? No, I am just grateful it happened." Nathan kissed her, soft and sweet. "Me too." They spent their wedding night in the cabin, just the two of them, the rest of the guests having retreated to hotels in town. In the morning, they woke tangled together in the bed where Hannah had slept that first night, when Nathan had been a stranger and the future had been uncertain. "I have something for you," Nathan said. He got out of bed and retrieved a large flat package wrapped in brown paper. Hannah sat up, curious. "What is it?" "Open it." She tore off the paper to reveal a painting. It was the view from the cabin windows, snow falling against a dark sky, but in the center, barely visible, were two figures silhouetted against the warm light from inside. It was beautiful and intimate, and somehow captured the feeling of those 3 days when the world had fallen away and only they had existed. "You made this," she said, recognizing Nathan's style. "I wanted you to have something that represented where we started, so you never forget how this felt." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. "I could never forget. This was when I found you, when I found myself." They spent the next year building their life together. Hannah was promoted to head curator at the Morrison Gallery, finally given the freedom and resources to create the kind of exhibitions she had always dreamed of. She curated shows that challenged viewers, that brought attention to artists who deserved it, that made people feel the way she had felt standing in front of that landscape painting when she was 16. Nathan stepped back from the daily operations of Xavier Renewable Solutions, hiring a CEO he trusted and moving into a chairman role that let him focus on vision and innovation rather than quarterly earnings. He spent more time at the cabin, painting and reading, and being present. He started a foundation focused on making art education accessible to underprivileged children, something Hannah had inspired. They traveled, exploring Europe and South America and Asia, visiting museums and galleries and soaking in cultures different from their own. They argued sometimes, because they were both passionate and stubborn, but they always found their way back to each other. 2 years after their wedding, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. She told Nathan on a Sunday morning, handing him a small box with a onesie inside that said "Future Art Critic." Nathan stared at it for a long moment, then looked at her with wonder. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby." He swept her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious and fragile. "I cannot believe this is my life." "Believe it." Their daughter was born on a snowy December evening, tiny and perfect with dark hair like Nathan and eyes that would eventually turn the same shade as Hannah's. They named her Claire, and she changed everything and nothing all at once. Nathan was a devoted father, the kind who got up for midnight feedings without complaint and read stories with different voices for each character, and built elaborate pillow forts in the living room. Hannah watched him transform, becoming softer and sillier and somehow even more himself. They moved some of their life to the cabin, spending summers and holidays there, raising Claire with an appreciation for both the sophistication of the city and the wild beauty of the mountains. She grew up knowing that her father was successful, but understanding that success meant nothing without integrity. She learned from her mother that art was not just decoration, but a fundamental way humans made sense of the world. On their 5th anniversary, Hannah and Nathan returned to the cabin alone, Claire staying with her grandmother for the weekend. They sat in the same chairs where they had talked through that first night, drinking scotch and watching snow fall. "You remember what you said to me that night?" Hannah asked. "About forgetting why you started your company, I remember. Have you found your way back to that?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "I think I found something better. I found a reason that matters more than the original dream. You and Claire, the life we have built, the impact we are making together through the foundation. I am not the person I was when I started that company. I am better, because of you." Hannah took his hand. "I am better because of you too. You taught me that asking for help is not weakness. That love does not require sacrificing yourself. That partnership means building something together, not losing yourself in someone else. We make a good team, the best team. They made love that night with the snow falling outside and the fire burning low, and it was familiar and exciting all at once, the way it always was with them. Afterward, lying in Nathan's arms, Hannah thought about the girl she had been, lost and uncertain, sliding across black ice toward an unknown future. She had not known then that the storm would change everything. That behind the door of this cabin was a man who would challenge her and support her and love her with a depth she had not thought possible. That 3 days snowed in would become the foundation of a lifetime together. But the universe had known, or fate had known, or incredible, impossible luck had intervened. And Hannah, who had come to the mountains searching for answers about what came next, had found something infinitely more valuable. She had found home. Years passed, and their life continued to unfold in ways both ordinary and extraordinary. Claire grew into a thoughtful, creative child who inherited her mother's love of art and her father's analytical mind. She started school, made friends, brought home paintings and stories and questions about how the world worked. Nathan and Hannah grew into their roles as parents and partners, learning to balance the demands of their work with the needs of their family. They had date nights and family dinners and quiet evenings at home. They supported each other through challenges and celebrated victories both big and small. The cabin remained their refuge, the place they returned to when they needed to remember what mattered most. They added onto it over the years, building a studio for Hannah and expanding Nathan's workshop. Claire had her own room, decorated with her artwork and treasures found on hikes through the woods. On their 10th anniversary, they threw a party at the cabin, inviting everyone who had been at their wedding and many who had come into their lives since. Hannah's mother was there, older but still sharp, regaling Claire with stories about Hannah's childhood. Nathan's father had passed 2 years earlier, but his presence was felt in the careful woodwork throughout the cabin, projects he and Nathan had completed together. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Hannah found Nathan on the deck, looking out at the mountains. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, slipping her arms around his waist. "I was thinking about the storm. About how I was sitting alone in this cabin, feeling sorry for myself and lost, and then you appeared at my door. Best wrong turn I ever made. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had made it to your rental cabin, if the storm had hit a day later?" Hannah considered this. "Sometimes, but I don't think it would have mattered. I think we would have found each other eventually. Maybe not that night, maybe not in that way, but somehow. You sound like you believe in fate now. Maybe I do, or maybe I just believe that some connections are inevitable. That some people are meant to find each other, and the universe conspires to make it happen." Nathan turned in her arms, pulling her close. "I love you, Hannah Xavier, more than I did yesterday, less than I will tomorrow. That is disgustingly romantic. I learned from the best." She kissed him, tasting wine and joy and the life they had built together. Inside the cabin, Claire was helping clean up, chattering with guests, being exactly the kind of person Hannah and Nathan had hoped to raise. Outside, snow began to fall, gentle and steady, transforming the world into something clean and new. And Hannah, standing in her husband's arms in the place where their story began, felt grateful for the storm that had brought her here. For the blizzard that had seemed like a disaster but had actually been the beginning of everything beautiful in her life. Some storms, she had learned, were not meant to be weathered alone. Some storms were invitations, chances to find shelter with someone who would become your home. Some storms changed everything, but in the best possible way. This storm had given her Nathan and Claire, and a love deeper than she had known existed. It had given her purpose and partnership, and the kind of happiness that came from building something real with another person. And as snow continued to fall and the evening faded into night, Hannah knew that whatever storms came next, they would face them together. Because that was what they did. That was what they had always done, from that very first night when a lost woman and a lonely man had found each other in the midst of a blizzard. They had built a life from that moment. A beautiful, messy, joyful life full of love and laughter and occasional chaos. A life neither of them would trade for anything. The storm had passed years ago, but its gift remained. And would remain, Hannah knew, for all the years to come.